Target acquired.
The hills of eastern Kentucky lay beneath a sky the color of an old bruise. Aston done yielding. Eleanor Davis, known to all us now, traced the distant tree line through the powerful scope of her grandfather's old hunting rifle. It wasn't the sort of weapon one often saw in such precision.
No,
A robust,
this is impossible.
303 Lee Enfield, worn smooth at the stock, but in her hands, it hummed with a quiet authority. 3 miles away, a distance that defied every training manual, every established record, a man emerged from a concrete bunker, unaware that a girl barely passed her 18th birthday, from a struggling farm nestled deep in the Appalachian Mountains, was about to etch her name into a history few would ever know. Target acquired. Nell whispered into her radio, her voice a ghost against the killing Afghan wind. Beside her, Sergeant Miller, his grizzled face etched with a lifetime of sun and hard -1 battles, lowered his binoculars, his hands trembling slightly. Now, he muttered, the disbelief thick in his voice. That's not a shot. That's a damn miracle. Winds gusting at 40 knots, temperature differentials playing havoc with every calculation. And you're talking about a 3- mile kill shot with the 338 Lopua Magnum when the world record barely clears a mile and a half.
How do you feel about the specialized programs, Nell?
Nella's finger found the trigger. Her pulse a steady drum against the tumultuous thrumming of her own spirit. Below them, scattered across the valley floor, 3 insurgent cells had converged for what intelligence indicated was a major weapons exchange. The target, a shadowy figure named Alminus
Here are my
Hazel,
shooting records, sir.
architect of 17 terror attacks across 3 continents, stood in the center of it all, believing himself untouchable at such a distance. God in his desolate kingdom. Command. This is Overwatch 7. Nell spoke into her headset, her gaze welded to the scope, requesting permission to engage primary target at extreme range. Static crackled through her earpiece. A brief, violent storm, while Colonel Sarah Hayes' voice cut through, sharp as an Arctic wind. Davis, confirm your range estimation. 4,800 meters. None. Wind south southeast at 40 knots, gusting to 50 -5. Temperature differential calculated at -20 -9 degrees Fahrenheit. Coriolis effect compensation already dialed in for this hemisphere. A long pause stretched, taut as a wire, across the continents.
What in the world
Then,
is this?
Davis, that exceeds maximum effective range by over 2 miles. No military sniper in history has made a confirmed kill beyond 1,700 meters. Nels Jardine, she had spent the last 6 months devouring every long range engagement record, studying trajectory calculations until her eyes burned, practicing on targets most seasoned snipers wouldn't attempt. Her instructors called her obsessed, her fellow recruits called her mad. But lying here on this rocky outcrop, watching history unfold through her rifle scope, Nell knew this moment had been inevitable since the damp Appalachian earth first seeped into her bones. Since the day her grandfather had first placed a rifle in her small, ivory hands. Son, with respect, she replied, the words carefully measured. No 18-year old girl from a cattle ranch in the Appalachian Mountains has ever been deployed to this theater either.
But
here we are.
my hunting
6
rifle
months
can hit a
earlier,
deer from
Nell
a
had
quarter
been
mile
stacking
away.
hay bales
No
under the
problem.
vast, often weeping, Kentucky sky, her rifle propped against a dry stone wall as she took aim at an errant crow that threatened her family's struggling flock. The Lee Enfield, 303 had belonged to her grandfather, then her father, and now rested naturally in her hands, as if its swell soiled wood had been crafted specifically for her grip, its cold steel an extension of her own will. Eleanor Grace Davis, can you get those chores finished before you start target shooting? Her mom's voice carried across the fields, tinged with the same weary resignation that had colored most of their conversations since the bank's notice arrived. Willow Creek Ranch, 300 acres of rolling hills, stubborn cattle, and even more stubborn dreams. Was bleeding money faster than a calf caught in barbed wire. Cattle prices had plummeted. The relentless rain had lasted 2 years longer than
Appalachian
anyone
Mountains.
predicted.
Hunting.
Turning pastures to bog, and the bank wanted answers her family simply didn't possess. Nell lined up her shot on the
I have to
distant
admit,
crow,
I'm surprised by
calculating
your
wind,
skills.
distance, and the slight drop. In the splits, second between breath and trigger pull, the crack of the rifle echoed across the valley. 800 yards away, the crow disappeared into a puff of black feathers. "She'll minus off," muttered her younger brother, Ton, appearing with a bucket of feed for the remaining flock. At 16, Tom had inherited their father's broad shoulders and their mom's practical stubbornness,
on a farm.
but he lacked Nella's almost
I
supernatural
spent a lot of
affinity
time
with a
by
rifle.
myself.
Dad wants
I'm
to know
also
if
a
you're coming
hunter.
to the county fairgrounds hall for the recruiter meeting.
Have you ever
He said,
considered the
kicking at a
moral weight
loose
of taking
stone.
a human life? Now?
Nell lowered her rifle, studying the distant hills where her shot
Hunting
had found
taught
its mark.
me the finality
What
of
recruiter
pulling
meeting?
that trigger
The army, yes,
and the
sending someone.
responsibility that
High
comes
school
with making
graduation
those
is next week.
choices.
And half the lads and lasses don't have college money or proper job prospects.
Why the
Tom's voice
military,
carried the same
not
worried undertone
university?
that had plagued their household for months.
Financial need,
Mom thinks
personal
it might be
calling,
worth hearing
and a
what they have to
desire
say.
serve something
The idea
greater than
of leaving the
myself.
Appalachian Mountains, of trading these endless green hills and familiar gray mountains for military barracks in foreign deserts, should have felt wrong. Instead, as Nell shouldered her rifle and followed Tom towards the
How do you
farmhouse,
relate to your
she
peers,
felt
then?
something she hadn't experienced
get
in
along
months,
with
a
some
flicker of
people.
possibility, a fragile
value
spark against
honesty
the
and hard
encroaching
work,
gloom.
And I
That
struggle
evening,
to relate
the
to
Davis
mediocrity.
family gathered around the kitchen table, the same scarred oak surface where
Have
3
you
generations had
experienced
planned
any
their futures and
unusual
weathered their
visual or
crises.
perceptual phenomena
Nella's
beyond the normal
father,
range of
Garrett
human
Davis,
experience?
spread
Ask them
papers
those
across
rapid
the
or
wood
serious
grain,
ways.
his calloused
I
hands
always
moving
had
between
strong
bank
eyesight
statements
and a good
on
sense of
repossession
spatial
notices
awareness.
with a practiced, weary resignation. The numbers don't lie, Garrett said quietly, his weathered face reflecting 40-5 years of Kentucky rain and hard graft. We've got maybe 6 months before the bank takes the farm.
Hello,
I
Sergeant
can pick up
Major.
more shifts at the quarry. It won't be enough. Nell's
Nell,
mother, Brenda,
You
reached across to
absolutely
squeeze her
shattered
husband's
their
hand.
evaluation
At
standards.
40-2, Brenda Davis had the kind of
You
quiet
not only
strength
qualified, you
that came
surpassed
from
the
raising
requirements.
children in hard country and making impossible budgets stretch to cover basic
Fort Benning
necessities.
wants you immediately for advanced sniper program.
Well, figure something out. We always do. The Army is offering signing bonuses, Nell said suddenly, surprising herself with the words. The idea having solidified in the long doctor back from the distant market town. The recruiter mentioned exceptional shooters might qualify for specialized programs with enhanced benefits. Garrett Davis looked up sharply, his eyes, usually kind, now held a flicker of something unreadable. Nell, you're 18 years old. You've never been further from home than street. And I can outshoot every hunter and park ranger in 3
Nell,
states.
Thank you for coming.
Nell
in today.
replied,
I
meeting
need to
her
ask you
father's
about your
gaze steadily.
grandfather's service.
Grandpa taught me that skill is currency.
I'm
Perhaps
ashamed to
it's
admit
time I
know
spent
very
some of
little
mine.
about Reese
The
Davis, but
silence stretched,
I found
long
documents
enough
saying
for the
he was a
grandfather
sniper.
clock in the hallway to chime 9 times. Its steady tick minus a counterpoint to their unspoken
I want you to
anxieties.
look at this.
Finally,
Okay,
Brenda
Bruce,
Davis spoke, her voice soft but firm. What kind of specialized programs? Paul had spent the afternoon researching military sniper schools and marksmanship programs on
The
her
Artemis
ancient
Program
laptop,
began in
its fan whirring like a
1943
distressed beetle.
to study
Now,
rare genetic
balancing it
variation
on
in
her and ease
marksmanship.
on the porch swing. I cited her findings.
Your grandfather was a
Sniper
member of
training,
the early
the Army
Artemis
Marksmanship
Program.
Unit, Special Operations Support. She paused, choosing her words carefully. The kind of programs that come with substantial financial compensation and educational benefits. Tom
Reese
leaned
Davis
forward,
made an
his
impossible
eyes
shot,
bright with a mixture of excitement and worry.
1,750 yards.
You mean,
It was quickly
like
hidden under an
military
official cover
sniper
story.
score? That's serious
Oh my
stuff.
God.
No, I'm a serious shooter. Nell replied simply, the words settling in the damp air.
Artemis
And
subjects
serious
process
problems
visual
require
information
serious
differently.
solutions. Garrett Davis
It's almost
pushed
a
back from the
natural
table,
ballistic intuition.
walking to the window that overlooked the fields where 4 generations of his family had worked the land. Your great-grandfather fought in the Great War. Your grandfather served in the Second World War. I did 2 tours overseas. He turned back to face his daughter, his expression unreadable, heavy with unsaid things. Military service changes you.
Has the military
Nell,
been watching my
it
family
takes
line?
something from you even when it gives something back. Perhaps,
It was not
Nell said
intrusive,
quietly, her
but
gaze fixed on the
confirmed her
familiar
scores,
patterns of the oak grain.
triggered a
But
database flight.
sitting here watching the farm die slowly is taking something from all of us. The unspoken weight in the room was a tangible thing. Heavy as the morning mist that clung
So
to the
much
valleys.
longer.
Thou knew. With a
You can
certainty
choose
that
to
was both
proceed with
chilling and
standard sniper
liberating,
training,
that her path
or you
had
can
been laid
opt
out for her
the
long
Artemis
before this
Specialized
moment,
Program.
an ancient calling echoing through the generations. The recruitment
How
meeting
many
at the
people like
county
me are
fairgrounds
there?
hall took place in the same drafty room where Nell had given her valedictorian speech just
There are
3 days
currently
prior
only
about
7
pursuing
active
dreams despite
worldwide,
obstacles.
an
Sergeant Major
extremely
Garrett
rare
Evans stood
genetic
behind a
marker.
folding table covered with brochures and a laptop.
I need
His
your
army
decision,
dress
Nell.
uniform crisp despite the late spring humidity.
24 hours.
Evans, perhaps 30-5, possessed the controlled intensity that spoke of years of military precision. His presentation covered standard enlistment options, military occupational specialties, and educational benefits. But when Nell approached his table afterwards, carrying a worn folder of her shooting records and competition scores, his entire demeanor shifted, the mask of professional geniality slipping. These scores real? Evans
Passed my
asked,
final
scanning the
evaluation,
documentation
but
Nell
now
had
I have a
compiled.
really big
800
choice
minus
to
yard
make.
groups under 2 inches. Consistent hits at 1 mile and 1,200
We're just so
yards with
proud of you,
hunting
Nell, we
rifles.
really are.
Wind compensation calculations at this
But I
level.
worry about you
Every
out there
score is
alone.
witnessed and documented. Nell replied, her voice steady.
Your
I can
grandfather
demonstrate
always
if
said,
necessary. Evans'
Artemis will show
eyes
you the way.
narrowed with professional interest. A spark of something beyond routine curiosity. Miss Davis, how much do you know about military sniper programs? I know they are looking for exceptional marksmen with the mental discipline to perform under extreme pressure. No, the United States Military Academy at West Point and the Special Operations Units represent the pinnacle of military shooting. And I know that specialized programs come with specialized compensation. They also come with specialized risks. Evans said, his tone serious, the weight of his words hanging in the air. It's designed to break people who think they're tough enough to handle anything. The dropout rate exceeds 70%. Nell met his gaze without flinching. A lifetime of stubborn resilience hardening her features. Sergeant Major, I've been supporting my family's farm since I was 12. I put meat on our table through hunting since I was 14. Won every shooting competition within 200 miles of here for the past 3 years. I don't break easily. Evans studied her
I will
for a
not
long
fail.
moment, taking in her steady
I will not
hands,
give up.
her direct eye contact, and the quiet confidence that radiated from her small frame. At 5 feet 6 inches and 120-6 pounds, Eleanor Davis
Thank you
didn't
for
look like
being
the
my
typical
friend.
military recruit, but something in her bearing suggested depths that weren't immediately visible, a steel beneath the quiet exterior. Tell you what, Evans said finally, a faint smile playing on his lips. There's a qualifying shoot happening at the Fort Benning training area next week for prospective candidates for advanced marksmanship programs. You show up with documented proof of your shooting abilities past the initial screening, and they'll personally ensure your application gets serious consideration. What's the screening involve? Standard marksmanship evaluation at distances up to 800 meters. Basic physical fitness requirements. Psychological evaluation to assess suitability for high-stress military occupations. Evans handed her a business card along with several recruitment packets. Miss Davis, I'll be honest with you. In 15 years of recruiting, I've never seen civilian shooting scores like yours from someone your age. But military sniping is about more than accuracy. It's about mental fortitude, emotional control, and the ability to make life minus or minus death decisions under extreme pressure. Hal pocketed the business card and extended her hand for a firm handshake, her grip surprisingly strong. Sergeant Major Evans, I appreciate your honesty.
Nell,
I
where did you
didn't
learn
drive an
advanced
hour and a
ballistic
half to the
principles?
county fairgrounds
I
hall to
taught
hear about
myself
why
with my
I might not
grandfather's
qualify.
notes.
I came here to find out how to enlist.
You think
Has
you can
now
outlast
turned to
me,
leave.
recruit?
Evans called after
Just
her.
try to keep up,
One more
cadet.
thing. Davis, your grandfather was Rhys Davis. Served in the European theater in World War II. Correct. Nell stopped. Surprised, a chill tracing its way
Did you
down
see
her
that?
spine. Yes. How did you know that? Evans's expression
believe it.
revealed nothing. A practiced blankness. Just making
Davis,
conversation.
Your results today are truly
Military families
exceptional.
interest me. The doctor back to the farm gave Nell 3 hours to contemplate the magnitude of what she was considering. The Kentucky landscape rolled past her battered pickup truck's windows, endless green fields, distant mountain ranges shrouded in mist, and the kind of open space that made a person feel simultaneously infinite and insignificant. This was home, the only world she'd ever known, and leaving it would mean abandoning everything familiar.
you're better than
But
that.
staying would mean watching
see
her
it.
family lose everything they'd built across for generations. Her phone buzzed with a text from her best friend, Sarah Jenkins, was heading to Ohio State University in the autumn on a partial scholarship. How did the military thing go? Still think you're crazy, but I support your craziness. Nell smiled despite her churning thoughts. Sarah had been her closest friend since primary school, the steady voice of reason to Nell's impulsive decisiveness. They'd spent countless hours
Congratulations,
together
Nell.
in the mountains
Advanced
hiking
eyes are
and
watching you
camping,
now.
with Sarah providing the practical planning while Nell
I
handled
choosing
the
my
hunting
path,
and outdoor survival
it chosen
aspects
for
of their
me?
adventures. Another text appeared. Seriously, thou?
Nell's
You're
doing
one of the
so well
cleverest
out
people
there.
I know. The military might be
She
perfect
always
for
was a
you,
determined
but
one.
just make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. The right reasons. Nell considered this as she turned onto the gravel track leading to
You
their
have earned my
farm.
respect,
Was
Davis.
financial necessity the right reason? Was the desire to use her shooting skills professionally the right reason?
Your
Was
results
the
are
restless
beyond
feeling that the
precedent, Nell.
Appalachian Mountains, despite their beauty, were too small
Advanced
to
Command has
contain her
already flagged
ambitions?
her name for
The
special
right
review.
reason? Her grandfather's voice echoed in her memory, although rumbling guidance like stones shifting in a river. Skill without purpose is just showing off. No, but
I got
skill
in.
applied to something important can
The
change
sniper
the
program.
world.
They
The
offered me a
next
slot.
morning, Nell woke before dawn, as was her habit, and instead of heading straight to
These
the barn
elite
for milking and
programs, Nell,
feeding,
they demand
she
more
found
than just
herself
skill.
drawn to the old
They
stone
demand
out buttling at the
everything.
far edge of the property,
right, honey.
a relic older than the farmhouse itself. The structure
I
had
really
been
think
built
you were
by her
born for
great
this.
minus grandfather's great minus grandfather, a shepherd generations removed, and in recent years had been used mainly for storing old farm equipment on family keepsakes deemed too valuable to discard, but not practical enough to keep in the house. Nell had always loved the musty, timeless smell of the place, the damp earth and dry hay, the tang of ancient metal. As a child, she'd spent hours exploring its shadowy corners, discovering forgotten treasures from earlier generations of devices. Now, with the possibility of leaving the farm for military service, she felt a sudden, urgent need to reconnect with her family's history. The padlock was
Nell's
stiff with
file is
disuse,
clean.
but the key,
Her record
kept on
is
a hook by the
impeccable.
kitchen door,
I don't
still
believe it.
turned in the rusty mechanism. Inside, dust motes danced in the sparse beams of early morning light that filtered through the narrow slits in the
Ballistic
weathered stone
drift
walls.
caused by the
Nell
Coriolis
moved
effect
carefully among
dictates
stacked
a
furniture,
predictable deviation.
old wicker baskets, and farm implements
Why are
that
they
hadn't
so
seen use
focused
in
on you?
decades. In the back corner sat an old wooden chest she recognized as her grandfather Reese's military footlocker. She'd seen it before, dusty
Some
and neglected,
questions even
but
I
had
don't
never
have
explored
answers
its
for yet.
contents. Respecting its quiet solitude, today, something drew her to it with an almost magnetic pull. The brass latch was tarnished, but opened easily under her touch. Inside lay neatly folded. Hey, moth. Seton uniforms, medals in velvet cases, and a stack of letters tied with a faded tartan ribbon. But what truly caught Nell's eye was a leather bound journal, wedged against the side of the trunk. She pulled it free, noticing how the binding was worn smooth from handling. The leather soft and pliable beneath her fingers. Opening
True aim
it,
comes
she
from
saw
the heart.
page after page of handwritten notes, intricate diagrams, and
next
meticulous
Artemis training
calculations
cycle
in her
begins tomorrow,
grandfather's
and I need
distinctive,
your answers
elegant
soon.
script. As she leafed through the journal, Nell
Artemis
realized
operatives face
she was looking at
extraordinary
detailed
missions of
ballistic
national
calculations,
importance.
trajectory charts, and environmental adjustment tables far more sophisticated than
What
anything
happens
she
if
would have
I refuse
expected
the
from a
Artemis
World War II
program?
veteran. Many of the notes referenced shooting positions and techniques
But
she'd
you would
never
still
heard
be
of.
an exceptional
Despite her
sniper.
extensive reading on
But your
marksmanship,
family line would
her eyes
remain
widened
under
at some of the
watch.
formula's calculations for spin-drift compensation at ranges beyond 1,000 yards. Humidity density adjustments that weren't standard practice until decades later, and complex trigonometric functions accounting for firing at extreme angles. These were advanced concepts that even modern snipers struggled with. Yet her grandfather had been working them out by hand in the 1940s. A yellowed newspaper clipping, brittle with age, fell from between the pages. It showed a young man in a uniform, surprisingly dapper, being decorated by a stern-looking officer. The caption read, Lieutenant
You
Rhys
just have to
Davis
follow
receives
orders.
commendation for exceptional service. European Theater 1944. The article mentioned only that Lieutenant Davis had provided crucial tactical support during a sensitive operation. With no specific details, its language deliberately vague. Nell's hands trembled, a tremor that had nothing to do with the morning chill. Her grandfather had been a military sniper, one who had set records, and no one in the family had ever mentioned it. She'd learned to shoot from him, spent countless hours with him on the farm's improvised firing range, and he'd never once hinted at this hidden history, this extraordinary past. She continued exploring the trunk and discovered a false bottom, cleverly concealed beneath a loose plank. Beneath it lay a folder
Nell's
marked
leadership instinct
CLASS,
confirms she is Artemis
IFIED
material.
in faded red letters, and a small,
Should I tell
sturdy
them
metal
about
box.
Artemis?
The
Or
folder
keep it a
contained
secret for
documents
now?
so old the typewritten text had begun to fade, the ink bleeding into the paper like old blood. She scanned the pages quickly, her eyes widening as she
We
read.
all have our battles to fight.
Lieutenant Rhys Davis, designated marksman with the 1st Infantry Division, is credited with the elimination of General Major Wilhelm Richt, or at a confirmed distance of 100 yards. This engagement, conducted on April 12, 1944, represents the longest confirmed sniper elimination in current military records, due to the sensitive nature of the operation and potential intelligence implications. All details are classified top secret. No public recognition or official record of this achievement is to be maintained in standard military files. Nell's hands trembled violently now. Her grandfather had been a military sniper, one who had set records, and no one in the family had ever mentioned it. She'd learned to shoot from him, spent countless hours with him on the farm's improvised firing range, and he'd never once hinted at this history. The small metal box contained a worn brass compass and a set of dog tags. Engraved on the back of the compass was a simple message. The words carved with care, true aim comes from the heart, not just the eye. R.D. Nell sat back on her heels, dust swirling around her in the half-minus light of the shed. Feeling as though she had discovered a secret passage in a house she thought she knew completely. Her grandfather, a gentle, patient man who had taught her to shoot crows and white-tailed deer, had once used
This
those same
indicates an
skills to change the
unusual
course of
visual
history,
processing
to alter
ability.
the grim tapestry of war with a single, impossible shot.
Just follow the
As she
light with your
carefully
eyes,
replaced
please.
the items, her fingers brushing against the cold metal of the metals, she noticed one more document tucked
Classified
into a
hand,
side pocket
top
of the
secret.
trunk. It
Artemis
was a
Program
medical
hand,
report stamped
genetic marker
CO
identified.
and FID
Recommend long-term
and TIL,
monitoring of subject's
detailing an
descendants.
unusual genetic test. The technical language was difficult to parse, dense with scientific jargon, but certain phrases jumped out at normal ocular neural processing, enhanced visual
Reese's
minus
shot
spatial
changed the
cognition,
entire time
and genetic
travel for our
markers
allied
consistent with
operations.
superior depth perception and temporal processing speed. A handwritten note at the bottom, signed by someone with the title Chief Medical Officer. Great. Subject demonstrates abilities consistent with previous cases in the Artemis Program. Recommendation: continued monitoring of bloodline for potential recurrence of the genetic anomaly. Noah's mind raced, a frantic flurry of questions. Was this talking about her grandfather? Or some kind of special genetic trait that made him an exceptional marksman? And what was this Artemis Program? Named after the Greek goddess of the hunt? Whatever it was. It seemed the military had been interested enough in her grandfather's abilities to conduct specialized genetic testing. Something that would have been extraordinarily unusual for a World War II soldier. She carefully
Continue
returned
observation.
everything to its place,
Potential hereditary
making sure to position
recurrence
items
likely
exactly
in
as she
future
found them,
generations.
leaving no trace of her intrusion. But she couldn't resist slipping the compass into her pocket. Its core weighed a tangible link to the past. A silent promise. Something
What is
told
your final
her
decision,
she might
recruit?
need its silent guidance in the uncertain days ahead. As she locked the shed behind her, the heavy padlock clicking
documents
shut
are
with a
highly
finality that echoed in the
Understood, Colonel
quiet
Hayes.
warning. Nell felt a strange mixture of pride, confusion, and a burgeoning determination. Her decision to pursue military marksmanship no longer seemed like merely a practical solution to her family's financial problems. A
Artemis
desperate
will change
gamble.
you, Nell.
It felt like she was following a
Not
path
just your career.
that had been waiting for her all along. A path her grandfather had
this
walked
truly my
before
choice?
her, leaving
Or was it
silent
always
markers
written?
for her to find when the time was right. A path woven into the very
But you have
fabric
to
of her
follow your
being.
heart
The
now,
Fort Benning
not just what the
qualifying
Army
shoot took
expects of
place
you.
on a gray Tuesday morning in early June. The air dampened, heavy with the
Service
scent of
takes
wet
something
earth and
from you.
distant peat.
Even when it gives something
Nell
back.
arrived before dawn to find 20-3 other candidates already
Grandpa
assembling their
passed this
equipment,
gift to you.
their faces
Use it
serious,
well.
their movements practiced. The group was predominantly male, mostly college -8, with several obvious military brats who carried themselves with an inherited, easy confidence. Nell set up her shooting position with methodical care, arranging her gear with the same careful attention to detail she'd applied to farm work for years.
Artemis
A ritual that
begins
calmed her
immediately.
nerves. Her rifle, the old 303 Lee-Enfield, was older than most of the competition's gleaming,
I will not
modern
walk away
equipment,
from my
the
destiny.
same she'd used for hunting. But she'd modified and tuned it herself until every component performed flawlessly, a testament to her
Artemis
meticulous
begins now.
nature. The first time at one of these evaluations? Asked the shooter beside her. A tall woman with expensive, customized-made gear and a clipped, East Coast accent. I'm Eleanor Croft. West Point Officer Training Corps Program. Eleanor Davis. No replied, adjusting her scope's focus. Her voice
You are
a
now
low
part
murmur.
of history.
First time? Yes. Ellie looked over Nell's rifle setup with barely concealed condescension. Her gaze sweeping over the old wooden blued steel. Hunting rifle? Oh? Interesting. Most of us are using precision target rifles for this kind of evaluation. That old 303 won't hold up past 600 yards against a
This
match
program
minus
does
grade
not
equipment.
exist on
Dear.
paper. It only
Most people aren't
exists in the
consistently hitting
shadows.
800 minus yard targets with hunting rifles. Nell replied pleasantly, a slight, almost imperceptible tilt of her head. But I suppose we'll see how everyone performs. The evaluation began with standard marksmanship tests at 200, 400, and 600 meters. Nella's shots grouped tightly at each distance, her technique drawing attention from the evaluating instructors, their hushed comments reaching her ears like distant whispers. Master Sergeant James Crawford, a lean man in his 40s with the kind of weathered hands that spoke of decades handling weapons, began timing Nell's target acquisitions and noting her shooting positions, his brow furrowed in concentration. Davis, Crawford called out after her 600-meter string, his voice cutting through the quiet precision of the range. You're off minus hand shooting stances I don't recognize
She's
from
faster
standard
than any of
military
them.
training. Self-minus art technique. Sergeant. Hunting in the Appalachian Mountains requires adapting to terrain and conditions that don't always accommodate textbook positions. Crawford made additional notes on his evaluation sheet, his pen scratching furiously. Show me your 800-meter grouping. The 800-meter target stretched the abilities of several candidates. Now watch Telly Croft struggle with wind compensation. Saw 2 candidates fail to achieve acceptable accuracy, then noticed one shooter actually hit an adjacent target frame entirely.
Nell's
His frustrated
brain
curse
processes
echoing
data
across the
like a
range.
machine.
When her turn came, Nell settled into a prone position, the damp earth cold against her cheek, checked her scope settings, and began her breathing routine, a rhythm as old as the mountains themselves. The first shot struck dead center. The second shot, adjusted for a subtle wind change, less than an inch away. The third, fourth, and fifth shots created a group that could be covered with a quarter. Bloody hell,
Only a handful of
muttered
us
one of the other
worldwide.
candidates, his voice thick with disbelief. Did she just shoot a sub-minus MOA group at 800 meters with a hunting rifle? Master Sergeant Crawford lowered his spotting scope and walked over to Nell's position, his expression unreadable, a mixture of awe and suspicion. Davis, how did you learn to read wind at extended range? Hunting white minus
Nell's brain
staled
patterns actually
deer in mountain
accelerate under
conditions.
stress,
Nell
unlike
replied,
any other recruit
beginning
we've
to
seen.
clean her rifle, her movements precise and unhurried.
If I succeed, this will
Wind in the
define me.
mountains changes constantly.
If I fail, no
you
one
learn
will
to
know
read
I
it or you
tried.
go home empty-minus handed. And where did you learn to compensate for temperature and altitude variables? Nell paused her cleaning routine. Her eyes meeting his. Violent error. Mostly. Some internet research. Lots of practice. She looked up at Crawford, a challenge in her gaze. Is that a problem, Sergeant? Crawford's expression remained unreadable, but a faint flush touched his cheeks. Davis, what you just did doesn't happen by accident. Sub-minus minute minus of minus angle accuracy at 800 meters requires understanding of ballistics, atmospheric conditions, and rifle mechanics that most people don't develop without formal training. I had formal training, Nell said, a
Remarkable
ghost of a
self-control.
smile playing on her lips. My grandfather taught me to shoot when I was 8. My father taught me to hunt when I was 12. The Appalachian Mountains taught me everything else. Prophet studied her for a moment, his eyes narrowing slightly, as if searching for a hidden roof. Your grandfather was Rhys Davis. Nell felt a chill run down her spine, a prickling sensation of recognition. Yes. Did you know him? No, Crawford said a little too quickly, his voice flat. But I've heard the name. He moved on to the next shooter without further explanation, leaving Nell with a host of unanswered questions. Ellie Croft approached as Nell packed her equipment. Her previous condescension replaced by a grudging respect. That was unexpected, she admitted, extending a hand to Nell. Where do you learn to shoot like that, Davis? Family tradition, Nell replied, not wanting to elaborate further on the complex tapestry of her heritage. Ellie nodded slowly, a thoughtful expression on her face. Well, you've got skills. I'll give you that. But
You're not good
military sniping isn't just about
You'll
hitting
fail.
targets on a controlled range.
She's stronger
It's
than
about
even Rhys
performing
was
under
at this
pressure in
stage.
hostile environments, with lives at stake. I understand that. Do you? Ellie's tone was challenging, a familiar competitiveness creeping back into her voice, because I've been training for this my whole life. My father was Marine Recon. My brother's Army Special Forces. This isn't a hobby for me or a way to pay bills. It's my calling. Nell met the other woman's gaze steadily, an unyielding strength in her eyes. We all have our reasons, don't we?
Nell
I know
passed
my
phase
own.
2 with
The
resilience
psychological
rare
evaluation
even among
took place
Artemis
that
recruits.
afternoon in a sterile conference room within the Fort Benning complex. Stark contrast to the wild beauty of the surrounding hills. Now face 3 evaluators, a military psychologist, a veteran sniper instructor, and a medical officer. Now faces a mixture of professional curiosity and detached assessment. They
Wind at
asked
7
questions
degrees.
about stress management,
Range 300.
decision minus making
Compensate for
under
moisture.
pressure, and her motivations for pursuing military service. Probing the depths of her psyche, Miss Davis, the psychologist began, his voice calm and measured. Sniper operations often involve extended periods of isolation, sometimes in hostile environments. How do you handle being alone? I spend most of my time alone. Now replied honestly, a faint smile touching her lips. Hunting, time work, target practice. I'm comfortable with my own company. The mountains teach you that. Military sniping may require engaging human targets, the sniper instructor said bluntly, his gaze unwavering. Have you considered the psychological implications of potentially taking a human life? Nell had expected this question and had spent considerable time thinking about her answer, weighing the heavy moral implications. I've been hunting since I was 12. I understand the finality of pulling a trigger and the responsibility that comes with taking a life. I also understand that some situations require difficult choices to protect innocent people. To prevent greater harm, the medical officer, a stern-faced woman with an air of quiet authority, reviewed her physical fitness scores and background information, her pen scratching on a clipboard. Your academic records show exceptional performance in mathematics and physics. Why military service instead of university? Financial necessity and personal calling. No answered. Yeah, if I spare him, the words carefully chosen. My family needs immediate financial support, and I have skills that align with military requirements. Beyond that, I want to serve something larger than myself, to make a real difference. The evaluators exchanged quick, almost imperceptible glances, a silent communication passing between them. Miss Davis,
She was born for
the
this.
psychologist continued, his tone still calm. You're remarkably composed for someone your age. Some might say unusually composed. Do you feel you relate well to your peers? Now consider this carefully, sifting through her memories of school and village life. I relate well to people who share my values: hard work, honesty, taking care of family. I don't relate as well to people who are satisfied with mediocrity or who avoid challenging themselves.
Good
The
morning,
quiet life of the
candidates.
farm. It demands certain
Today, our
qualities.
focus shifts
Toward the
to
end of the
team-based
session,
operations.
the medical officer asked a question that caught
All right,
Nell
our
off guard.
primary objective
A subtle
is
shift
to
in the
secure the
interview's
anomaly
carefully
at Sector
constructed
7.
rhythm. Have you ever experienced unusual visual processing abilities, heightened perception of movement, or exceptional depth perception beyond normal human capability? Nell thought of the document she'd found in her grandfather's trunk with its references to abnormal ocular neural processing, the words echoing in her mind. Had they somehow known about this? Was this a standard question or something specifically targeted at her? A subtle probe into her hidden inheritance? I'm not sure what you mean by unusual, she answered carefully, her gaze steady. I've always had good eyesight and spatial awareness. It helps with shooting. It helps with
She's
navigating the
adapting faster than
hills.
the others.
The officer made a note
noticed
without
that too,
commenting
Colonel.
further, her expression unreadable. After 2 hours of intense questioning,
All right, keep
Nell
low
was
and watch for
dismissed with
movement on the far
instructions to
ridge.
wait for evaluation results. She spent the remainder of the afternoon in Columbus, Georgia, walking through the town's small market square and marveling at the number of
You
people
demonstrated
crowded into
exceptional
relatively
leadership under
small
stress.
spaces.
Your quick
After
thinking
years of the
saved the
Kentucky
mission.
mountains, vast
We're proud of
emptiness,
your performance,
even a
Nell.
modest town
Stay
felt
sharp, team.
overwhelming and
We have incoming.
claustrophobic. A dizzying whirlwind of human activity. Her phone rang as she sat in a small, traditional diner, picking at a plate of fries and a cup of coffee, watching the sparse
velocity,
traffic pass
2.5
outside the
meters per
window.
second.
Nell, it's Sergeant Major Evans from the
Alpha
recruitment
team,
office.
check your
His
6.
voice carried a
Copy
note of
that.
undisguised excitement, a rare sound I just received your evaluation results from Fort Benning. Nell's pulse quickened, a frantic bird fluttering in her chest. And Davis, in 15 years of coordinating these evaluations,
Ready?
I've never seen scores like
Ready,
yours.
Croft?
You didn't just qualify for
Always,
advanced
Davis.
marksmanship programs. You shattered the evaluation standards. Absolutely shattered them. Evans paused, allowing the weight of his words to sink in. There are people at Fort Benning
Nell
and
naturally assumed the
Georgia
leadership
who
role.
want to meet you
She's
immediately.
stronger than
Fort
expected.
Benning, home of the U.S. Army Infantry and Sniper School and Advanced Sniper Training Programs. They're offering you immediate acceptance into the most selective shooting program in the U.S. Army, with a signing bonus that would make your head spin. Nell closed her eyes, feeling the immense weight of decision settling on
Welcome
her
to your
shoulders,
final phase
heavy
4
as a winter
test.
fog.
This live
What
scenario
kind of
will
timeline
combine
are we
all your
talking
team
about?
skills.
Basic training starts in 6 weeks. If you accept, you ship out for Fort Benning immediately after completion. The whole process takes about 8 months before you're assigned to an operational unit. 8 months to transform from a Kentucky farm girl to a military sniper. 8 months to develop skills that could support her family and serve her country. 8 months to discover if her natural abilities could translate to professional excellence, to something truly extraordinary. Sergeant Major Evans. I'll need to discuss this with my family, but I'm very interested. Davis? One more thing. The evaluation team noted something unusual about your shooting style. They said, you seem to intuitively understand ballistic principles that take most people years to learn. Don't let anyone convince you that's not valuable. Nell hesitated, then asked the question that had been burning in her mind since her discovery in the old stone outbuilding.
Copy that.
Sergeant Major, is there anything in the Army called the Artemis Program?
All right, team, let's
A
move
long
out. Stay
silence
sharp.
followed, thick and heavy, punctuated only by the distant clatter of crockery in the diner. Then Evans' voice, suddenly cautious, losing its previous enthusiasm. Where did you hear that name? Davis? I found it in some old papers of my grandfather's. Rhys Davis. He served in World War II. Another pause, even longer this time. Davis?
We did it!
That's not
Yes,
something I have clearance to
finally.
discuss over an unsecured line.
Glad that's
but
over.
if you're asking what I think you're asking, let's just say certain talents run in families. And the Army has always been interested in those talents. Was my grandfather a sniper in World War
Nell's
II?
performance
I
under fire
honestly don't know
was
the
exceptional.
details. I
Absolutely,
can tell
Colonel.
you that during
Her
your
leadership was truly
evaluation,
inspiring.
someone ran your name through a database
No.
and flagged your file.
Your performance
That's why
was
Fort Benning
exceptional.
responded so quickly. That's all I can say. After hanging up, Nell sat on the porch swing at home, turning her grandfather's compass over and over in her hands. Its cool brass a comfort against her skin. The morning
Leadership
sun,
was never my
now
goal,
breaking through the clouds,
but it finds
coat the
me
brass,
anyway.
sending glints of light dancing across the weathered wood of the porch. The engraving stared up at her,
She
a
carries both
silent
gift
message from the
and
past.
burden of
True
her
aim
bloodline.
comes from the heart, not just the eye. She hadn't told her parents about what she'd found in the old stone outbuilding. Something told her that if her grandfather had wanted them to know
Well
about
done,
his
Nell.
military history, he would have shared it himself. A quiet,
You always said the moon
deliberate
would
man,
guide us.
but now, with her own military
Nell's
career about
advancement
to
to Phase
begin,
5,
she
final
couldn't help
trial.
wondering what other secrets might be waiting for her to discover. What echoes of the past would guide her future? The day after graduation, Nell was summoned to a meeting that would change the course of her military career. In a windowless conference room deep within Fort Benning's administrative complex, she found herself facing Colonel James Hayes, a silver minus-haired officer whose chest bore the badges of Army Ranger, Special Forces, and other elite qualifications Nell didn't recognize, their meanings hidden behind a veil of secrecy. Private Davis, Hayes began. Without preamble, his voice clipped and precise. What do you know about your grandfather's military service? How his pulse quickened, a drumbeat in her ears. Not much, sir. I know he served in World War II. Recently, I found some documents suggesting he might have been a sniper. Hayes nodded slowly, flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Reese Davis wasn't just a sniper. He was part of a highly classified program that identified and developed individuals with unusual aptitudes for precision shooting. He slid a folder across the table. Inside was a black and white photograph, faded with time, of a group of soldiers standing before a target range. In the center stood a younger version of her grandfather, a ghost from the past, holding a rifle that looked remarkably similar to the Lee-Enfield, 303 now in Nella's possession. The Artemis Program began in 1940-3. Hayes continued, his voice a low, steady drone. Soon, military scientists had identified a rare genetic variation that affected visual processing, proprioception, and temporal cognition. In layman's terms, people with this genetic marker processed visual information differently faster. More accurately, with an intuitive understanding of ballistic physics that couldn't be taught, a gift woven into their very being.
Even Reese never faced
Nell
this.
stared at the photograph, pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. A sudden, blinding clarity. And my grandfather had this marker. He was one of the first identified. The program was named after Artemis, the Greek goddess of the hunt, known for never missing her target. For her enduring aim, Hayes gestured to the folder, turned to the next page, and now found a document detailing shooting results from 1940-4. Her grandfather's name topped the list with a confirmed shot at 100 yards. But someone had handwritten a note in the margin. Ink faded. But still legible. Actual 1. 750 yards. A security classification number. 1,750
She
yards.
passed the final
Now
test.
looked up, shocked. Her voice aghast.
Yes, Colonel.
In 1940-4, with World War to minus our equipment, Hayes nodded, grim satisfaction in his expression. It was classified at the highest levels. The official record remained 100 yards for decades.
Nell,
Your
you have
grandfather
exceeded
eliminated
every
a high-minus
expectation.
ranking Nazi officer who was coordinating reinforcements
You earned
for the
this.
Atlantic Wall defenses before D-minus day. That shot, from a technical perspective, shouldn't have been possible with the technology of the time, and only a handful of people at the highest levels knew. After the war, the Artemis program continued in deep cover. It became particularly active during the
Your
Cold
next
War,
missions will be unlike
with
anything
operatives
you've
deployed
ever
for
imagined.
specialized eliminations in locations where conventional military action wasn't possible. Your grandfather was monitored throughout his life, as were his descendants. You've been watching our family.
her.
Huh. Nella's voice held a note of disbelief, almost
Yes, I think so.
accusation, waiting for this genetic marker to show up again.
I carry my grandfather's shadow.
Not watching in any
but also
intrusive
my own
sense.
light.
Hayes clarified, his voice smooth, professional, but yes.
She really
Military
did, didn't
research
she?
has maintained interest in families with
After
confirmed
all these
Artemis
years.
markers. When their shooting scores appeared in our database, certain algorithms flagged your name for review. He leaned forward, his gaze intense. Pearson? No. What you did at the
Nell is
evaluation
cleared for
range
future
shooting
deployment.
subminer, SEMO A groups at 1,200 meters with minimal family Azerians suggests you carry the same genetic advantages as your grandfather. You
She may
process
surpass
visual
even Reese Davis
information
one day.
differently. You intuitively understand concepts that take others years to master. Your brain calculates ballistic solutions automatically, like breathing, like the rhythmic rise and fall of the tides. Nell thought of all the times she'd known exactly where a bullet would go before pulling the trigger. A preternatural certainty. How she could sense changes in wind direction that others couldn't perceive. How distances and angles just made sense to her in ways she couldn't explain. As if the landscape spoke a secret language only she could understand. So, what happens now? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Now you have a choice. Hayes said, his words weighted with
I'll
significance.
honor both legacies.
You can proceed with standard advanced sniper training. You'll excel. no
Welcome to
doubt.
the Artemis
Probably
operatives.
become one of the finest in conventional forces, or you can enter a specialized program designed specifically for individuals with your abilities. It's more demanding, more classified, and far more consequential in terms of eventual deployment options. What's the program called? He smiled slightly. A fleeting, almost imperceptible shift
Terrain
to
is
its
rugged,
features.
so expect
Officially,
extreme
it doesn't
conditions and
exist.
limited visibility.
Unofficially, we still call it Artemis. How many people like me are there? Currently active 7, including you. The genetic marker appears in approximately 1 in 5 million individuals. Most never discover their potential because they never engage in activities that would reveal it. Some become exceptional athletes or surgeons, their abilities channeled into other precision skills. But those who find their way to marksmanship. Hayes shook his head, a genuine wonder in his eyes. They change history, usually without anyone knowing, their deeds fading into whispers and legends. Nell studied the faded photos of her grandfather and the other original Artemis participants. A gallery of silent, extraordinary figures.
Target marked. Moving to next.
Did my grandfather know what he was part of? Oh, that he was being studied initially? No. The
Now
first
to
participants
operatives.
were identified through exceptional performance and studied
Keep
without their
moving.
knowledge.
We are on
By
schedule.
1940-4, the program became more formalized, and participants were informed to a degree. Your grandfather knew he was part of something special, but I doubt he understood the full scope of the genetic research. And my father, does he carry this marker? No. The genetics are complex, and the marker doesn't follow simple hereditary patterns. It can skip generations or emerge unexpectedly in family lines. Your father was tested, of course, but showed no signs of the ability. Nell absorbed this information slowly, trying to process its profound implications. The weight of a secret legacy. And if I joined this program, what exactly would I be agreeing to? Specialized training far beyond standard sniper school. Deployment for missions of extraordinary strategic importance. Complete secrecy about your abilities and achievements. And Hayes hesitated. A slight
You've done
pause in his
exceptionally
otherwise
well, Mel,
unwavering
but
delivery.
I must warn
Monitoring of your own future
True
children for the
missions
marker.
will be far harder.
Nell felt a chill, a cold sliver of unease. At the
First
clinical
mission
way
complete.
Hayes discussed
The
her
world will
potential
never
children
know.
as subjects for monitoring, as if they were merely genetic carriers. And if I refuse, then you proceed with standard training. You'll still be an exceptional sniper,
This new
probably
mission is
one of the
unlike any
best in
other.
conventional
It is in an
forces.
active
The
war zone.
signing bonus
Sir,
and
what are the
benefits
parameters?
remain the same.
We need
But
you to
you'll
infiltrate
never
the enemy
deploy on the
lines.
missions that
The
truly
ongoing
utilize your
insurgent
full
activity in this
potential.
mountainous
And
border
frankly,
region
we'd
poses
still
a
monitor
severe
your
threat
children
to the
regardless.
stability of the
This
entire
ability
area.
is too rare and too valuable to ignore. Too vital to the nation's security. No thought of the found. Of her family as financial struggles. Of her grandfather's hidden legacy. The silent, hiding presence of his memory. She thought of the compass in her pocket. Its cool brass a constant reminder. Its inscription a whispered prophecy. True aim comes from the heart, not just the eye. I need time to think, she said finally, her voice firm, resolute. Hayes nodded, a thin, almost imperceptible smile. 20-4 hours. That's all I can give you. The next Artemis training cycle begins tomorrow. Basic training at Fort Benning was designed to strip away civilian habits and rebuild recruits' ass.